Oh God.
In
Season
case you
1
can't,
of The Next Generation, Episode 8, Justice.
in case you can't tell, we're not very big fans of this episode.
Welcome to the ReTrekking podcast, where fans of The Next Generation rewatch it episode by episode. I'm Tyler, and my friend here is...
Dylan.
Yeah. Give
Yeah.
us a plot summary before we just hammer into this shit. This
Fair
was
warning,
bad.
Tyler's probably going to swear a lot in this episode.
This was
so.
bad, man.
Alright, but anyways, plot summary time. The Enterprise, after dropping off colonists, decides to visit an uncharted planet in the strangely named Rubicon system for possible shore leave. There, they find a race of people called the Edo, who are overtly sexualized and horny. While this is happening, the Enterprise encounters an object in orbit which belongs to a race of multi-dimensional beings, and the ship tells them not to interfere with, quote, its children below. Now, back on the planet, after about 20-odd minutes of nothing, the Edo let slip that any violation of a law on their planet is punishable by death. Wesley, being awkward as always, destroys a container of plant and is sentenced to death. Lots of back and forth happens, prime directive, blah blah blah, and Picard takes one of the Edo women to the ship where she reveals that the thing in orbit is their god. More back and forth happens until finally Picard decides to interfere and save Wesley. He pleads with the alien god beings and they decide to let them go. Bloopity bloop, hooray, the day is saved. The end.
Can I have a confession? And I was telling Dylan before we started recording this that I have a confession. I don't think he appreciated how big of a confession it would be. Are you ready, Dylan? This has
Go
never
ahead.
happened in the 8-episode history of the show. I did not finish this episode. I only made it 35 minutes in, and I gave up. And this is from a huge Trekkie who loves Star Trek and everything about it, but not this. Not this travesty. So I didn't finish it, so I got relatively close, but I just couldn't make it. But I knew where it was going.
Well, it's fairly obvious how it was going to
Yeah,
end.
I mean they're gonna save Wesley because he's
Well, plus because we know that he's in later episodes because we've watched the entire
Yeah.
series before.
all right. So
But I do have a confession myself, and that's that I was actually somewhat like trying to like the last half of this episode because I actually thought it was kind of an interesting moral dilemma. It was just so boring that it.
yeah, it's the fatal flaw of this whole season so far. So where do we start, Dylan?
I guess I'll just start with that. In the beginning, I actually thought there was an interesting mystery with the Enterprise scenes, and that was actually like the parts of the episode I actually enjoyed the most because, let's face it, everything on the planet was kind of bad.
Where they detect something that's there but not there,
Yeah.
and they're like, "What's there?" I don't know. Yeah.
We don't know what's there, so we should probably figure out what's there. And it was like,
Yeah.
oh, hey, there's a thing, and it's like, I want to know what it is. But then they beam down to the planet, and well,
Yeah, the swinger paradise.
well, I'll let you go. Did you write anything in the good section?
No.
Well, okay then.
This is the
I'll
first.
just
This
go.
is the first time I've ever not had anything written down as good. And I had good for Code of Honor. I had good for Code of Honor, Dylan.
Yeah, I understand. Like, a little behind the scenes thing here. I was watching the episode like the morning we recorded this, and about 5 minutes in, I text Tyler, and I'm just like, oh god, I'm only 5 minutes in, and I already hate this.
Can I give one fun
and-
production fact? Because I gave one last time.
Sure, go ahead.
This episode was filmed at something called the Tillman plant in LA a lot of the time. and it was right under the flight path of the Van Nuys Municipal Airport, which meant that entire scenes were actually redubbed after, like, in post-production. So there are outdoor scenes that are dubbed, which is extremely rare for this show.
Yeah,
So
I
anyway.
actually didn't even catch that when I was watching it.
I didn't either, but I wasn't paying attention after the first 2 seconds. So,
Well, that might be a bit of an exaggeration.
but anyway, go ahead. We need to get to business here.
All right. The only other good thing I had was that I actually kind of liked the moral dilemma in the second half, because something that Star Trek's usually pretty good at is, instead of just presenting situations where it's like, oh, we just gotta, blow up a big enough bomb and we'll save the day. It was more of like, you actually see Picard struggling with, what can I do here? What should I do?
Do I break the Prime Directive or not?
Yeah, which they still haven't explained very well. Even though
they don't explain it at all in this episode.
Yeah, even though, like, one of the whatever her name was, Revan or whatever, the alien woman says, "Oh yeah, Riker explained it to us." And I was just thinking during that scene, would you mind explaining it to us too? Because I'm still not entirely clear on what it actually is at this point in the show.
I mean, hence the title "ReTrekking." I mean, we've seen it before, so we know what the Prime Directive is.
Or
but
what it's supposed to be.
If we were first-time watchers, and they it's a part of this episode, as they mentioned, the Prime Directive is we can't interfere with Wesley being killed by a bunch of swingers. And it doesn't explain what it is. It's just that they can't break it, and then they break this thing that you don't know what it is. It's just terrible storytelling.
Yeah, because you watched the original series, whereas I haven't. Is the Prime Directive a thing in the original series?
From what I remember, yes. I don't remember how specific it is. I know in the TNG era, it's, if they're warp capable, then it's a whole different ballgame. But they didn't mention that in this.
Yeah, they don't actually mention that until way later on, if I remember correctly. Because, yeah, that was, like, the big thing, was that they can't interfere with undeveloped races. And there's actually an episode far later on that sort of deals with that. Where
and it was a great episode.
Up. Yeah, it was interesting. It's actually an interesting episode because they slip up and, like, this super, like, undeveloped race, like, finds out about them and basically starts worshipping the Enterprise as gods.
Yep.
Which is an interesting episode that we'll deal with later on. But anyways, getting back to the episode at hand.
Can I give one of my observations?
Sure.
Observations. I can't talk today. I'm sorry. I don't know what's wrong with me. I can't enunciate right now. But
because your brain cells were killed by the amazing episode that you just watched.
As people could probably gather from the plot summary Dylan gave, they're at this planet and they want to take short leave, whatever. It's supposed to be great. Right before the break to the main title sequence, Picard actually says, "Let's just hope it's not too good to be true."
Yeah, I noticed that too, but I wasn't quite sure where to put that down, so I didn't write it down. But yeah, it was like blatantly obvious, like, this is scripted, guys. It's gonna be too good to be true.
And I just picture the writers being like, "Where can we put a giant cliche?" Oh, right here.
Like, it was such an unnecessary line because they already set up, like, this hint that things aren't as they seem with the glitch in the Enterprise's sensors. So I don't understand why they need to have Picard literally say, "This is gonna be too good to be true." Rah. All right, let's head into the bad, I guess. So, Tyler, why don't you start?
I thought we were already on the bad.
Well, we were kind of jumping back and forth. But let's actually explicitly state we're going to the bad.
Okay,
now.
I'm going to swear some, so people just forgive me. This is the dumbest, most idiotic, stupid fucking culture I've ever seen in Star Trek. It's so painful to see this, because there's a line where they actually say, "What is your way?" "Oh, it's running." And they say that their way in this show is running. And so the way that the people on this planet get around is they run, and that's their culture. Is they're running people who have sex with each other. And I don't think I've sworn on this podcast before, but oh my god, it pissed me off so much. Did you think that was that stupid, Dylan, or am I just crazy?
No, I thought it was stupid. Like my second bad, the one I have three bad because they're so all encompassing that it's just ridiculous. But the second bad I had was just everything on the planet is just plain awkward and just terribly acted. Like all the people who play the Edo are just like peace and good health and blah blah blah. And I want to greet this big guy and so on and so forth. It's just so poorly acted. And going along with that, I know you're not like a huge fan of Wesley. Like you absolutely hate his character, and I can understand why. I mean, I don't quite agree with it. But like, it's just even in this episode, he's so much more awkward and bad.
I just want to know how they took a preteen, or maybe it's a teen now. I don't know what age he's supposed to be because they never say.
Yeah, they never really do say.
I don't know why they take Wesley down to a planet of known swinger sex freaks. Like, that's a good place for my little boy. I don't know. There's just so much wrong with this. Like, I'll never forget. That's part of the reason it made it hard for me to finish the episode. I'll never forget when they ask, like, what is your way? It's running. Like, that's their culture, Dylan. They run places. And then they have sex with each other, and then they run. No one walks on this planet. No, sir. That's all I can even say. I didn't even finish the episode. I finished Code of Honor and I couldn't finish this episode, so whatever you want to say, go ahead.
The sexual tension, man. The sexual tension.
But it's not even
literally
tension.
what I wrote down.
It's just sexual awkward.
Yeah.
Riker's such a creep too. Can we talk about Riker?
They're all kind of creeps in this episode.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what you said in the plot summary in relation to just how sexualized these people are.
I just said they were overtly sexualized and horny. Because I was trying to make it like succinct so that we can actually talk in detail about it. But yeah, when they first beamed down to the planet about 5 minutes in, like about 30 seconds later, I was like, I don't know if I can do this, man.
They give these super sexual hugs where it's like, welcome to our planet. Rub my boobs on you. Rub them. And then, yeah, it does. It's like a 5-minute scene of them sexually hugging each other. It
just goes on, and there's no reason for it. Although I will say, I burst out laughing, and this is actually one of my sillies, but I burst out laughing when whatever her name is, I think it was Reven or whatever. She goes and she's like, I want to greet this big guy, and hugs Worf, and then Worf just slowly turns to Riker and goes, nice planet.
Yeah.
It's like I burst out laughing.
That was funny. That was actually good.
It was just so ridiculous.
That was funny, but it doesn't redeem
the rest of this crap.
It's this pusillanimous pile of total garbage.
It goes on, man. Like,
welcome to our planet. Let me sexually hug you. Hello, other member of the away team. Let me sexually hug you. Oh, hello, third member of the away team. Let me hug you. Like, yeah.
It's like 5 minutes of them greeting the away team with like sexy hugs.
It's just, Star Trek always has very like singular identities for their races where Klingons are warriors and Romulans are sneaky, Vulcans are logical, whatever. So it's not weird for a race to be so just simple, but the fact that this race's entire existence is they run and they have sex and they have stupid laws where when a kid runs past some stuff on the lawn, they kill him. And can we talk about the scene where the monitors come in? Can you talk about the monitors, Dylan?
The mediators?
Mediators, yes.
Mediators, I think they're called.
You should introduce that.
Okay, so basically, this is the third and the last bad that I wrote down, just because like I said earlier, they're so all-encompassing this episode. But there's a scene later on where, because once the weird thing in orbit makes contact with the Enterprise, it cuts off their communications with the away team, so they can't talk back and forth. But the away team doesn't know this yet, so Riker figures it out when he tries to contact them, and so they're going around, and Worf goes up to Tasha and asks if she can have a moment, but she's like, "Oh, listen to this," and so they start talking about their laws, and then that's when they let slip that, because the punishment for breaking any law on this planet, any freaking law,
death,
is death. And Tasha even points out, so even something as simple as keep off the grass, and they're like, well, that's why they just keep off the grass and don't break the law. It's like, are you serious? I don't understand the logic behind this.
I think it is the point. Maybe is you're not supposed to understand it, but it's just so.
It's so ridiculous. There's some ridiculous legal stuff that goes on in Star Trek, with other races and stuff, the way they do things, because this is actually a fairly standard thing where something happens to the away team.
They mess with the rules, and
then there's the whole moral dilemma thing going on, but usually it's not so dumb.
Usually it's not this foreign teenager ran across a place he wasn't supposed to, so now we're going to have our nearly naked, what are they called?
Mediators.
That's the best part of that scene. So for anyone who hasn't seen this in a long time, the mediators are just as naked as the rest of the people on this planet. So they come in these little man thongs. They're like, "We are the mediators. Do we have witnesses to this crime?" And they're supposed to be these authority figures, and they look just as absolutely stupid as everybody else on this stupid, godforsaken shithole planet. I don't know. It's just so... I can handle silly, but it just...
It wasn't even, silly. It was just plain, badly written.
What do you think about the end of this episode, Dylan? Because I'm so familiar with the end, considering I finished it.
Yeah, you totally finished it. Mm-hmm.
Did it pay off?
Not really. It's just sort of he has this dilemma. He goes on for a while, and then they go back down to the planet, and he basically is just like, "Come with me, Wesley," and whatnot, and they try to beam away, but they can't. So then he steps forward and makes this plea to the multi-dimensional god beings or whatever, and then, which is sort of interesting because he makes the whole point that life is a series of exceptions or something. Yeah. So it's a slightly interesting line, and then but because of the few sentences he speaks, they're like, "Okay, you can go," and so they just beam away then.
Don't get me wrong. I like the idea of a planet that worships an actual physical being as if it's a god, because the being's so advanced.
Yeah,
that's a cool idea. It's just when the planet is a bunch of joggers who have sex with each other, and that's their entire cultural identity. Yeah, it's like I said, the whole scenes on the planet are just plain awkward. They're just not interesting. The last thing I'd like to point out on my end that I can even think of is, so while Wesley Crusher is being threatened with death, Dr. Crusher comes up to Picard several times on the ship and is like, "Captain, I am mildly worried about this." And then Picard's like, "Not now." and then she just kind of waits. And then later she's still, "I'm still worried about my son being killed, I guess." It's acted so badly.
Yeah, I think
she doesn't even seem to care. She doesn't even care about Wesley being killed.
Well, I think I'm wondering if maybe it's even the action where this episode is dumb. Why are we shooting this?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, just acting in general is still shaky at best. In this
the last couple episodes weren't bad at all.
Well, I mean, we did talk about in the last episode how Crusher's "Oh, I'm possessed" acting was super conspicuous. But
that was more the writing though, I think, because Picard was just as stupid.
yeah, like it's still like the acting is still shaky, but it's
Yeah.
getting better. Like Picard is actually decent in this episode, I would say. It's still just a little weird how it's written, where he's just like, yeah, where Crusher comes up and it's like, I'm worried about my son. Not now, Doctor.
Oh, okay, that's fine then. I guess I just won't worry about my son being brutally murdered right now by a bunch of swingers. That's cool.
That's cool, man. That's cool.
Um, I just the point I really want to drive home for anyone who's listening to this who like Star Trek and has watched it before is just their culture is running. They have multiple scenes where Wesley is running with them and nobody walks. They jog and run everywhere, and that is their way. And that is what you're in for if you try to rewatch this. So be glad, I guess, that you're listening to this instead.
Or if you've watched this episode before watching.
I've never seen it before, actually.
I saw it once a long, long time ago.
I thought I'd seen every single episode of Star Trek. I have not seen this.
I saw this episode a long, long time ago, and I barely remembered it. Like, really, all I remembered is that Wesley got in trouble because of, like, the plant thing. I didn't really recall that it was Jaff, but I sort of thought it was, because it just seemed like the kind of thing. Because there wouldn't really be, like, much of a tense thing going on if it was just, oh, we have to, whatever. But there's a reason why I didn't remember this episode, and it's because it's stupid as all hell. Ugh.
Yeah. It's painful. It's painful to admit that there's an episode of Trek like this, just like Code of Honor. It hurts. It hurts you.
Yeah. It makes it hard to explain, like, why you like the franchise. Like, you just see episodes like this, and it's like, why the hell am I a Trekkie again? Like, really?
Yeah, you have to explain all the subtleties of, you know, how it progressively improves and I mean, the first couple seasons of all the Trek shows, besides the original series, 'cause that's just a different animal, they're all kind of rough, but it's kind of a minefield right now.
Yeah, I do think it's partially because of just, that changing landscape of TV back then.
Yeah, which this show also helped to change, so we'll see.
Yeah. Like, despite how bad, like, some of these early episodes are, like, the show has still been really influential for television in general.
Their handling of the B story is probably the worst thing of
Yeah, that's true.
right now.
Like, this episode didn't really have a B story. Like, it kind of seemed like it did at first,
yeah.
but it's sort of like it all like connected together.
It ended up combining the God figure into the rest of the episode overall.
Yep. So there wasn't really a B story.
I'm just gonna keep bitching about this episode if we talk about it more.
Yeah, we should probably cut ourselves off now. I have one last silly thing, and this goes back to the very beginning of the episode when Crusher walks in when Picard and Troy are talking and just blatantly interrupts them and then goes, "Oh, sorry, Troy." It's like, what?
It's a lot of awkward, yeah.
It's just one of those things that was like, wow, that was super awkward. I probably wouldn't have written that down if I had just watched it a little bit more and realized how awkward this entire episode actually is.
So I totally realize that everything I've been saying is it's mostly driving home the fact that
They run.
everything is just stupid and they run. And they're just a big jogging sex family who want to execute people, whatever. But one of the things that really stuck out to me before that was, especially, it's part of the ReTrekking concept. You know, we've seen it before. We know where the show is going. So with the Prime Directive, I was a little confused at first because the Prime Directive is they don't interfere with pre-warp civilizations. They don't affect the outcome of their society. So with this episode, it's not made at all clear, is this a warp-capable society or not? Or do they just see a pretty planet with sexy people and they want to land? It's not made clear at all. And I guess maybe they hadn't decided exactly what the Prime Directive was yet.
That's also partially possible because, like I said, I never watched the original series, so I don't know how they treated it.
I
But
really can't remember. Yeah.
but definitely in this show so far, they haven't really nailed down what it is. They've just like loosely mentioned it.
So far, it's just not interfering, kind of.
Yep. Not like basically what I read it as is like not violating the laws of a culture because you're outside of it or something.
But it becomes a huge part of the show later where it's, are they warp capable or not? And in this, it's just, they're sexy sex people. Let's have shore leave now.
And totally not have sex with these sexy people, even though...
It's the last thing.
You're right, Riker, like you mentioned earlier, but Riker is a creep.
Troy and Riker both. This is the last thing I'm going to say, otherwise we'll go on forever because this episode... It's the first one I haven't finished. And I love Star Trek. I just couldn't finish it. Well, you know, when they land and Riker's all like, oh yeah, getting some action. And then Troy too. Troy is like, oh yeah.
Well, at least Troy like seems a little awkward about it. Riker is just straight up like, yeah, baby.
Riker's just like, take me to your leader and let me seduce them. Because that's his role
got, like,
later on.
Like, there's the one scene later where like, before he starts talking to Worf, and he's just, like, walking past people, and he's just got this, like, smile on his face, and it's like, what is going on?
Walking through a giant sex party, yeah. I can't drive home enough how awkward the sex part was of the show. Just the fact that there's nothing else to these people. I'm fine with sex stuff. I don't care. I watch Game of Thrones. It's just the fact that there's nothing else to this race. They have sex and they run. I'm done.
Hey, baby. I'm Commander William Riker. I'm the second in command of the USS Starship Enterprise. Want to get laid?
Oh, it's so bad. I don't know. We're at 27 minutes, so I think it's a good time to call her quits.
Really? 27 minutes?
Yeah, we've just talked shit about this piece of garbage for that half hour.
Oh, wow.
So,
well, this is a first. Well, congratulations if you've been tuning in this entire time. You have just listened to our first half-hour-long podcast episode where all we did was...
It's mostly just talking about the same stupid stuff because we can't even process that it's a real thing.
I think a significant number of my brain cells might have committed suicide after this episode. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
So whatever. I guess that would be a good place to end it because we will just keep going. And
any other notes? Okay, here's one last thing, and then I'm gone. The design of the God figure space station ship thing in orbit was really weird. I didn't understand what it was supposed to be exactly. It was a few disconnected spaceship parts, phased out looking.
Yeah, maybe it was supposed to be like more like a space station or something, because they make the point that they can be in like multiple areas at once because they're
multi-dimensional. Yeah.
So maybe it was like supposed to be a space station thing or something. But yeah, they don't really talk all that much about like what it actually is.
They give way more time to the senior staff being sex starved than to plot and setting.
Yep.
All right, I think that's good.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end it.
Season 1, Episode 8 of Next Generation, Justice / Swinger Sex Party.
I'm pretty sure that was not the production.